Perfect. Good evening, all, and welcome to the December 14th Administration Public Works meeting. We have a quorum. Alderman Sufferton, if you don't mind reading RC1, suspension of the rules allowing for remote participation. Alderman Sufferton, I can't hear you. Is it just me?
No. Okay. I'm totally not on. Oh, you got me? Okay. Sorry. I move that we suspend the rules pursuant to the executive order issued by Governor G.B. Pritzker related to the coronavirus pandemic, allowing us to meet remotely.
Second.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite,
Still be a
Alderman
little late.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And we are on to consent. So if we can make note of which items you would like removed, if any, and then we will pass the consent agenda.
Alderman Ruth Simmons, there is the public comment.
Okay. Mr. Vasilko, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Alderman Ruth Simmons. I won't take that long. I just want to know why on A7, why do we have to hire a special landscaping company to maintain the landscape at Robert Crown? Seems we have staff to do that at city expense. I'd like to know why we're still paying instructor services or so much in the way of instructor services for things like softball league umpires and other things, when during this COVID period, most of the classes, if any of them are operating, most of them are not operating, and yet we're still paying instructor services as part of Parks and Recreation. And still confused why our capital improvements we committed to over $1 million of capital improvements that are being paid this period, and why some of those things couldn't have been postponed until next year or the year after, when our resources are in better shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
And then you have to approve the minutes.
Okay. Move approval of the regular meeting minutes from November 9th, 16th, and 23rd.
Second.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Motion passes. Waiting to hear on which items you
I
would
would
like.
like to have A7 removed, please.
Okay.
A2, please.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Let's see, what number is this? I want to have the movable partition for the Levy Senior Center removed. What number is that? I don't even know.
A5.
A5.
Okay.
Alderman, although A16 is on the consent agenda, it is for introduction and action.
Okay. What should we do about that so that it's moved properly?
It needs to be removed from the consent agenda.
Got it. A7. Oh, that one is off already. Okay, is that it?
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'd like to verify that was A2, A5, A7, and A16. That's what I heard being removed.
That's what I have also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to move approval on the consent agenda.
Second.
I'll call roll. Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Okay, consent passes. A2, staff recommends approval of the City of Evanston's BMO Harris Amazon credit card activity for the period ending September 26, 2020 in the amount of $12,993.90.
Second.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
I abstain.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Motion passes. A5, staff recommends, I'm sorry, Alderman Rainey, will you read that one?
Yes, I will. Let me get it up here. Sorry about that. A5 is, this is approval of a contract award with Manifold for automated movable partition for the Levy Senior Center Linden Room. This is in the amount of $70,933. I move approval and I'd like to speak to it.
Second.
Alderman Rainey?
Thank you. This is another project of the Levy Foundation. They will be paying the full amount. However, because of the city's procedure for purchasing, et cetera, the city has to pay first, and then the Levy Foundation will reimburse them. The Linden Room, which is being renovated right now, is the room that most of us use if we're having a board meeting. Alderman Fleming uses it sometimes, I use it, or if we're having a citywide meeting even, it's used. It's the huge room that is really two rooms, and it's divided for smaller meetings by a partition, and this is one of those partitions. The reason it's being ordered now is because if we were to wait until the time it's needed, it's like a 3 or 4 month advance notice, because it's, I guess, to some extent a custom made item. This is, I believe, I think the number is over $300,000 that the foundation is spending on this project. It's going to be all new flooring, new counters, a special sound system and video so that meetings can be streamed. And there is one issue in this memorandum of understanding, and that is this room is going to be very high tech once it's been renovated, and the rent charged for outside users will be substantially increased. And it was discussed with our city manager that perhaps some arrangement can be made that some amount of that increased rent could go to the foundation for additional renovations, because their next project is going to be the fitness room, which is going to be really expensive. And I see Lawrence Hemingway is staring at me right now. And they don't want the regular rent that we always charge. But if there is any additional rent that we can charge, any additional money into the foundation's coffers would really help with adding to the money used for the fitness room. So that is the only concern in the MOU that we saw. But this is a fabulous project. And if you've been in the Levy Center lately, and if you've seen the library, they paid for that. They did that renovation, and it's really quite beautiful. So that's all I have to say. And also they've done other things like the carpeting in the hallway, etc. Right, Mr. Hemingway? Okay. That's all.
Yes, Alderman Rainey, that is correct.
Yes,
Thank you.
please support this.
If there's no further discussion, we can take the roll. I support it.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton, Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
A7, staff recommends City Council authorize the city manager to execute a 2-year contract for landscape maintenance at Crown with Christie Weber and Company in the amount of $55,215 each year for a total of $110,430. The contract would allow up to 3 additional year, 1 contract extensions in the discretion of the city. Funding will be from the Greensway Fund, which has a 21 budget allocation of $162,000. I move approval.
Second.
I have,
Alderman Fleming?
yes. So I take this off just for the same question that Mr. Bastilko had. I did read the memo, but given that, Crown was a huge investment, and we've talked about, the Crown Fund that's going to do some of the renovations, the maintenance. Can someone just speak to the need for this large of a contract there? Why we can't use, city staff or a current contractor?
Good evening, Alderman and Chairperson. Dave Stoneback, Public Works Director. The Green Waste Division, which is the division that would maintain this, has 16 employees, and they're already responsible for mowing over 265 acres of grass at 74 parks, maintaining 47 playgrounds and 16 sports fields. They also help out with all the snow removal during the winter. When this facility came on board, and I'm sorry, they actually had lost an employee about 2 years ago through a budget cut. So when this project came online, the 2020 budget actually included the rehiring of a position for greenways. That position wasn't supposed to start until halfway through the year when the facility was going to be open and the landscaping complete. But then with the budget cut, this proposed position to bring them back up to the full staff that they once had was not hired. And we don't feel that we have the staffing right now to be able to undertake the additional work that this area has. Now, one of the main differences is when this was a complete turf field, grass turf field, we would have to mow it, but we were able to mow that with a gang mower, something that one person could operate and would mow a 16-foot wide swath of grass at one time. We are spending that much time just maintaining the synthetic turf because you have to go out once a week you're pulling a magnet behind a piece of equipment that pulls up all the metal that unfortunately gets left in the field. And that's only 3 foot wide. So it takes us as long to maintain the synthetic turf fields as it did to mow the entire area. So we just don't have the staff to take on the work that's required by the new landscape at Robert Crown, including not only the turf area, but there's the no-mow grass, the mounds that are out there that, yes, you don't have to mow, but you have to weed. And then there's lots of beddings that are out there with ornamental grasses in it, some with bulbs. You have a vine garden out there, and there's 127 new trees planted out there as well that need to be maintained. So this is a lot of work that is beyond our current staff's ability to do and do properly. And that's why when we were unable to hire the new position, we went out to bid to get quotes for doing this landscape maintenance.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question, or if you could just have this for a referral later since we're on the topic. I would be interested to know when the last time our Greenways team was fully staffed and when we kind of went the route with outsourcing some of these lawn maintenance contracts. That can be for some time next year, but I'm interested to see the difference between when we were fully staffed and doing the projects in-house and when we started outsourcing the work. Thank you for that explanation.
Alderman Rainey?
Yeah, let's take a look at what we're paying for this contract, $55,200. You hire a full-time person on the Greenways staff. I don't think one full-time person on the Greenways staff is going to be enough to fully cover the corner of Main and Dodge. I just don't see that. I think this is probably the deal of the century if these people are as good as their references say they are, and it seems that they've gotten spectacular references. This is a show place. And I'm going to be really upset if I drive by Robert Crown, the new Robert Crown, and see weeds and litter and trash and just a mess on that corner. So if Christy Weber for $52,200 a year can bring out their crew and clean this place up and make it look like it's supposed to look week after week for an entire year, and then the second year, I say our staff did a great job finding these people, because I don't think one more person or a fully staffed Greenways is going to do it. I'd rather see the parks in my ward maintained and the parks in your wards maintained, and sometimes they aren't. So let's get Greenways out into the neighborhoods and let this professional group here with a contract do Robert Crown. I just think it's a very good deal, and we shouldn't defeat it.
Any further discussion? We can go ahead and take the roll.
Alderman Fleming,
Hi.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton, Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Motion passes. Then we have A16, staff recommend adoption of ordinance 123-020, by which the city council would amend section 1011.5, schedule B of the city code to establish a four-way stop control at the intersections of Gray Avenue and Noy Street and Hartree Avenue and Noy Street. Alderman Ravel is requesting the suspension of the rules for introduction action.
Second.
Approval? Okay, thank you.
I believe you need a motion to suspend the rules.
Not in committee. They just need to send this to council so that the council can suspend the rules.
Okay.
So there's no discussion, and we can take the roll.
Yes. Alderman Fleming,
Hi.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Motion passes. I'm working on one device, so I'm making sure that was the last of our consent, and we can move on to discussion items.
Yes, that was the last one that was pulled off. Everything else was approved on consent.
Thank you. Items for discussion. APW 1. Staff recommends direction from the Administration Public Works Committee on amending the number of refuge sanitation cards required for 2 and 3 flat buildings. It's for discussion. Alderman Rainey?
Well, my reference was, if there is a 2-flat that is not using one of their cans, why should they be paying for pickup? You know, I don't think the question is how many cans should a 3-flat or a 2-flat have. I'm saying that people should be able to opt out if they're not using their can, or if the unit is vacant. Not just for a month or something, but if there is, forget about the vacancy. If there is no use of one of the cans and people are being required to pay for that can, and the reason they're not using it is because they are recycling to the max, we shouldn't charge them for solid waste pickup. That was my request. On the one hand, we say, and my argument was, on the one hand, we say we want to reduce the amount of solid waste and increase the amount of recycling. Yet, we punish people by charging them for an empty solid waste can and make them pay for a bigger recycling can. That's all I'm gonna say.
Is there any staff feedback on that? I'm in support of Alderman Rainey. It is definitely, supporting our CARP goals, our environmental goals to have less waste, and we should not be penalizing. We should give that option. It might incentivize folks to have less waste if they can reduce their fees. So is there any staff feedback? And is it that every residence requires a can? Could you give us any feedback on how we got here and what we might be able to do to change this?
Good evening again, Dave Stonebeck, Public Works Director. It is the policy of the city that each unit be given a solid waste cart and therefore charge for them. Probably the most 311 complaints that we receive in the city is about overflowing trash cans, fly dumping, trash all over the place that we have to go and pick up. So we're concerned that if a building is allowed, there's several situations where potentially there would be trash that's left outside the cart. And that's all we were trying to avoid. What I was trying to demonstrate in the memo is that the cost for 65-gallon carts is cheaper than one 95-gallon cart. And the table also indicates that only 20% of the 2 flats and 25% of the 3 flats are taking advantage of going to the smaller size carts. Now, if there's somebody there's a 2 flat that already has 2 65-gallon carts and they're saying they don't need one of those, I find that somewhat challenging, because there's always a situation sometime during the year where you're probably going to have more trash than what 2 families can throw into one 65-gallon cart. That's how we look at it. And therefore, staff is recommending that we try to push the use of the 65-gallon carts rather than the 95-gallon carts.
But in the event, Director, that you have a household in 2-family flats, often they're families that are sharing a multifamily, and you have a family that's composting and they're recycling and they're doing zero waste grocery shopping and all of the above, and they only need the 65-gallon cart. We should have a way that we could accommodate them. And I hear what you're saying, that it's not the norm, but in the case, for example, like if you use all sort of energy efficient practices for ComEd, like you don't pay extra and you don't have to pay a certain amount. You can actually get a credit back. So I don't think it's a unusual request, especially as we're encouraging folks to have less waste.
Okay, and I mean, if this is the will of
But
the
I
Alderman, we
hear you.
understand, but I don't know how we then regulate it from somebody like up by Northwestern who has a 2 flat, and they say, well, I only want to have to pay for one 65-gallon cart. I don't know how staff will be able to differentiate between that, where they're constantly using the services and they're not. Staff isn't picking up the carts, Groot does, and we're not going to get a report back from Groot about overflowing trash carts like this. We only get that on our franchise agreement, not at the 13-some thousand stops that they make at all the single-family residential homes and 2 flats, 3 flats.
Yeah, it is difficult because I get calls all the time about waste. So, Alderman Rainey?
Dave, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I am a big complainer and a messenger of complaints regarding overflowing trash or an empty can with a big bag of garbage sitting next to it. So I hear you. It just always disturbs me when we make our regulations based on bad guys. I mean, it just really bothers me. So why don't we not get rid of this and just sort of keep it on the back burner? And there's got to be a way that those people who really and truly do not need that cart, that live in these 2 and 3 flats, that they should be rewarded at some point in time. And maybe we can figure it out. I'm not sure. But it wouldn't be for large buildings. It would only be for 2 and 3 flats. And I can certainly see why it shouldn't even be considered for any other size building. But I want to continue to think about this. But I understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, I don't know what we would do if that were to happen. You know, people started calling up saying, I have a 2 flat. I only want to pay for 1 can. And you know for sure that they shouldn't be paying for 1 can. But there are the others, the hardcore recyclers who only need 165-gallon or whatever the other one is anyway. So I'll let this go at this time, but I'm not going to let it go forever. We'll think of something.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey, for not letting it go. And maybe, Director, if you could work with Kumar to see if there are any best practices in other cities on incentivizing less waste. There might be some program that could help us come up with a better solution. So we don't have any action on that.
Yeah.
Next item,
I would take it off it's really not on the agenda because it's a discussion item, right?
Right. And next we have APW2, the Franchise Negotiating Committee recommends City Council review the letter of comment regarding the franchise negotiations. This is for discussion as well.
Good evening, members of the committee, Chair Rue Simmons and Director Stonebeck, Kumar Jensen, Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the city. I don't have a presentation per se for this item, but the committee, the Franchise Negotiating Committee, did see that it believed that it was important to bring this letter to the committee for feedback and review prior to the city manager sending this letter on to ComEd. And just to provide a little bit of background, the Franchise Negotiating Committee is made up of 2 aldermen, Alderman Rainey and Alderman Ravel, has staff guidance and support from myself, Dave Stonebeck, Kimberly Richardson, and Kelly Yandersky. And there are 2 members of the Utilities Commission that sit on that committee, Tucker Partel and Christopher Ski. And the committee has been meeting really since the summer, but particularly since September and October to draft this letter. And the goal of this letter is to communicate very clearly from, to ComEd from the city what our priorities and our goals are in negotiating a new agreement and reestablishing our relationship with ComEd. And so there are a list of 29 different priorities or actions within the letter. We think it's important to be comprehensive, but those 29 actions and priorities are broken out into 4 goals, 3 of which are sort of formal adopted goals by the City Council, and then 1 of which, implementing the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, is just demonstrated by the City Council's support for that. And so I would be glad to step back, and if Alderman Rainey has anything she would like to say as a member of the committee, but then I'd be glad to take any feedback or comment from committee members.
Alderman Sufferton.
Sure. Kumar, hi. And Dave, thank you everyone for your work. Dave, when I read through this, you know the parts of the 6th Ward that have frequent outages. Is there anything in there emphasizing the importance of addressing, and I know that there are likely other parts of the city that have similar issues, addressing and prioritizing those areas? I don't know if that's a Dave or a Kumar question.
Well, Dave, if you want to first, okay, I'll take it first. So the one of the priorities is certainly investing in and prioritizing reliability within ComEd's infrastructure. The way that we've put some of the reliability concerns into the letter have been in the way that ComEd reports information to the city, and in holding, we've requested that they commit to participate in public forums. And so some of those would be for residents, some of those would be for large users. I've had some really good calls with some of the large users in Evanston to better understand what some of their concerns are, and similarly have heard from residents. And so ComEd is held to sort of industry reliability standards and is regulated. And so it's fairly difficult for the city to impose any additional sort of restriction or requirement from a reliability standards perspective. But we do think that we can get, hopefully close that feedback loop a little bit better to help ComEd see which are the circuits or the outages that are causing the most pain for the city. We already get outage information from ComEd, but there's some additional information, and having them come and listen to residents share what some of their concerns are, businesses, I think could improve that.
Thanks. Appreciate it, man.
Was there any further discussion? Alderman Rainey?
I think the committee should know that Kumar did just an absolutely spectacular job. This is about the 3rd or 4th iteration, because the committee kept coming up with questions and responses, et cetera. And the committee that is much smarter than I all agreed that this is a very excellent message to ComEd. And we spent a lot of time analyzing Chicago's response to ComEd. And I don't know when the last time was both Chicago and, I know Evanston never has, but Chicago had gone without a franchise agreement. Mar, they ever gone without one before?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah. So we're both in this together. So it's kind of interesting to see if maybe I'm not sure how it's going to be taken, but it certainly is inclusive. And, I think to Tom's remarks, maybe we should incorporate something specific. Kumar, do you think we should?
We did have a specific item here related to that sort of spoke directly to reliability. Yeah, but we decided to remove it, I think in the 3rd iteration of the letter, just recognizing that we don't have the regulatory authority to, and really what the issue was is we were having a difficult time coming up with a standard that we could hold them to from a reliability standpoint. And so we are just relying on what has already been established by the state. And so we thought that by trying to make ComEd more visible and accountable to different user groups like large users and customers. That would be a more effective way of helping them understand what we thought the biggest issues with their infrastructure were in Evanston.
But did you move approval of this, or is this just discussion?
It's
Oh,
just,
we're
the-
because
yeah.
we just want Erica to sign this, our city manager to sign this and send it, right? So,
Correct.
well, that's what I
Okay.
would recommend.
Okay. It's for discussion. Do we need to, are you asking that we take an action or?
The
Okay.
action being requested is that Erica Storley, our city manager, sign this and forward it on to Commonwealth Edison.
Is
I'd be
that,
happy
can Alderman just give direction that happens, or does there need to be an action of some?
There does not need to be an action.
Perfect. Great. A3, staff recommends City Council review the community solar pilot program for Evanston customers and provide feedback on the program structure. This is also for discussion.
Good evening, members of the committee, Madam Chair. So Kumar Jensen again, Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer. I do have a presentation. I recognize we're running out of time here, so I'm glad to bring up the presentation and get through it, if that would be helpful, or I can just explain the key area that we're seeking feedback on. I would take direction from the chair on this.
I would be okay with you paraphrasing it and giving us the key points for consideration and discussion.
Excellent. Okay. So the program in a nutshell is a program that's provided through the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, which is a regional council of governments that has gone out and competitively bid communities, is competitively selected a group of solar developers to provide community solar subscriptions to residents in the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus area, which is about 250 communities, including Evanston. And so this program is free for communities to participate in. Essentially, we as the city would agree to participate, and then that would allow Evanston residents to be able to subscribe to community solar installations through this program. And so the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus would take care of the majority of the administrative portion of this, so actually enrolling people, sending postcards to residents, taking care of all of that. We would work with them on branding and on language and setting up a web page and things like that. But the primary benefits of community solar are that you don't need to have a roof to be able to install solar on. This is a virtual program where a resident or a small commercial property will enroll in a solar installation that's already been installed somewhere. And then through that program, that subscriber will receive a subscription credit. And so the standard credit is a 20% off the supply portion of their electric bill. And so the supply portion is one of three parts of your electric bill, but it oftentimes can be one of the larger ones. And so that is the standard program that city staff are moving forward with launching. And we don't actually need to sign any agreements with anyone. It really is already a pretty well-established program that we, as the city, opt into and then can begin recruiting residents. The agreement for the subscription is actually signed between the resident or a business. There's only about 100 businesses in Evanston that really would be eligible based on their ComEd service, but there's still quite a few. Would be between the subscriber or the customer and the developer. Those agreements are then sort of that subscription credit is then owned by the subscriber, and so they hold on to that pretty much as long as they have a ComEd account. So they can carry that subscription with them throughout. And so they're guaranteed a cost savings compared to ComEd's default price to compare. And so we think about this program as a third option in ways that residents would be able to purchase renewable energy or participate in renewable energy. The first is our aggregation program, the electricity aggregation program, and the second is installing solar on your house or your business. And so this third option, we think also removes some of the barriers for residents to be able to install or have access to solar energy. It's a really popular program, particularly because it provides a cost savings, but also because many community members live in multi-unit buildings that are either ill-equipped or unable to have solar on them. And so this is a way for them to participate in having affordable clean energy. So that's the basic program. City staff is looking to tweak the program a little bit to try to provide some additional value to low-income residents. And so the way that we are proposing to do this is that the 20% subscription value, or the credit, I'm just going to call it a credit, the 20% credit that a subscriber would get back on their bill, that amount is actually can be flexible and transferred a little bit. And so what staff is proposing is to give residents two options. The one option is just to sign up and get the 20%. The other option is to only take 10% of that credit. And that other 10%, we would actually add together all the people that said they wanted to only do 10%. We got 10 people that said, yes, you know what? I'll take a little bit lower. I'll take that 10% credit. We'll add those 10 together and we'll actually bundle those and give them to a low-income Evanston resident so that they get 100% off of the supply portion of their bill. And so there's one sort of hiccup in this whole, in recommending this process. And that is that we have sought some legal counsel on whether or not we're allowed to do that, since it's not a standard option. And essentially we are allowed to do that, but since those subscription credits would then become sort of be owned by that low-income resident or account holder, the city, if that person were to move outside of Evanston and stay within the ComEd territory, that person would take that subscription with them. And the city wouldn't have any sort of legal ability to claw that back. We could ask that they sign, sort of a good faith agreement saying that they would relinquish it, but we would not, pursue that legally or try to claw that back in any way, such as like imposing fees or fines. And so what my question is, what I feel staff need direction on is given that caveat of potentially having those 100% subscriptions move outside of Evanston at some point. It's not guaranteed that they will, and I have no reason to believe that the majority of them would. Whether or not that is an option that you would like staff to include, we could do it as a pilot, but to consider in rolling out the program.
So yes, this is wonderful. I guess my question is, in terms of the qualification, is there a way to measure someone's residency to date, and that as an indicator on if they are a long-term resident? So maybe 2 years residency in Evanston, does that have any indication on anything? Just thinking of ways that we can protect it so that it is a service and benefit available to Evanston residents that intend to stay here, seeing that we can't really enforce them, releasing the benefit.
Right.
How do we figure this out? This is fantastic. And thank you to everyone that's been working on this.
Absolutely. I think there are some ways for us to determine that. We do get an account list from ComEd for another program that we do where we can actually see the date that their account was created. And so we can see that we have some people that have had the same ComEd account number for 40 years. And so there are some ways that we could potentially look at that. I'm not entirely sure how we would be able to make decisions on who would receive that subscription based on that, but I think that is information we could obtain.
Alderman Fleming?
Yeah, so Kamar, just for clarity, so when you talk about people moving out of town and then we are able to retain the credits, is that something that has already been worked out? Is that a legality we'd have to work out?
Well, so what's been made clear to us is that, so the way that the transaction works is that when someone moves an address anywhere, if they're in Evanston or moving outside of Evanston, their ComEd service at that existing address is shut off, and whoever moves in there after them gets a new account number. So if I move from 100 Main Street in Evanston to 200 Main Street in Evanston, I actually get a new account number moving to 200 Main Street. My account number doesn't move with me. And as that process happens, the subscription actually will stay with me into that new account. It is the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus responsibility to make sure that transition happens with ComEd. And so if someone moves outside of Evanston, we would know that they moved outside of Evanston, but we wouldn't have any real recourse to be able to hold on to the credit for them.
Is there any further discussion? Alderman Rainey, did you have something?
Nope. No,
Nope.
I did not. No.
Kumar, do you have enough direction, or what else do you need to actually make this happen? We need this.
Yeah, I think what maybe we could do is we could launch this. I mean, I think we're just going to go ahead and launch it. And once we've had our legal team review the structure that we're proposing, the plan is to launch this in mid-January. Launching the default program where everyone gets 20% off, like that's very easy for us to just go ahead and do. But it's mostly the complexity is trying to figure out how do we identify who the potential low-income their subscribers could be for the low-income program. And then I think we just essentially say we would encourage them to voluntarily return their subscription back to the Evanston pool, but we won't enforce, we won't go after them if they decide not to. Now, if they move outside of the ComEd territory, that subscription would revert back into our pool, is my understanding. So that is the approach that I would propose we take. And if the committee thinks that appropriate, we would be glad to come back and provide an update in March or April to let you know how things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kumar, I recommend that you work with all of our partners that have energy saving and utility saving programs and have a info session of sorts for the community at large on various ways that they can reduce their carts to 65 gallons, compost, zero waste grocery shopping, energy savings with ComEd, whatever NICOR has. If you could put that all together, the peak time savings with ComEd, all of those are great, and they all add up to savings that can be used for something that families need.
Absolutely. It's a great recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. And if there is no further discussion, are there any items for communication? Oh, Alderman Braithwaite? You're on mute.
No, I was interested in this topic. Can you just give me a real high level summary on where we landed on it before we wrap up, or can you?
I can. We are going to support Kumar in a partnership that will save energy and dollars for ComEd consumers.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll catch up after.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned, and we have planning and development, which will start at 5:30. If that's okay. Who's the chair? Is that okay with the chair?
I'm the chair. That's fine. Thank you, Alderman Rusimans.
Okay, thank you.